it is connecting to. Is it doing what I want that it's doing? Perhaps we're already live. Yeah, I think we're already live. It's just that I have to check if we're live at the right place.
I see it live.
You see it live, so you're on my Benrix channel.
Yep.
Soapbox, I mean. Good. Then hello everybody, 0 viewers. For me it says upcoming, but yeah, but it seems live chat. Oh yeah, I can hear myself. Okay, we're live. So, hello, viewer. The goal of this stream is reacting one specific argument of Alex here, or Cosmic Skeptic, and yeah, I can also quickly summarize what the whole debate is about. It's a debate between Ben Shapiro and Alex O'Connor. The question is religion good for society? And they had 3 sections in this stream, where they talked about 3 different questions, basically. And I only care about the first one, or to be more precise, one argument of the first one. And in the first section, the argument is about free will. And now I'm not sure which mic I'm recording to. Is it this one? No, it's this one. Oh, I hope that wasn't too loud. So I hope I'm now a bit clearer. The summary first just summarized the point of Ben and Alex. I would say both. At the end of this section, both agree with each other that their view is consistent. They just think the underlying assumptions is different between the two. And therefore, Ben thinks Alex is delusional, and Alex thinks Ben is delusional. But in essence, they think their logic is coherent. And so I will now start with Ben's point of view. It is not for this debate, he says it is not possible to prove that God exists or doesn't exist, but most people believe that free will exists. Free will can't exist in a purely materialistic world. After all, everything in the materialistic world has to have an external cause, but the definition of free will is uncaused decision-making. Theoretically, it is possible for smart people to ponder on the non-existence of free will, but practically speaking, most people will lose their drive because they think that things lose meaning. And that means society won't run anymore. Ben thinks that humans have a self which is capable of uncaused decision-making. So with self, I mean like something like a soul or a consciousness or whatever. And he can say if that decision-making is an element of the self or due to a combination of the parts of the self. But the theistic worldview allows for possible explanation in a way that is purely naturalistic. The theistic worldview allows for a possible explanation in a way that the purely naturalistic worldview doesn't. Or in other words, he can appeal to mystery while atheists can't. Yeah, that's my summary. I've written it down beforehand, so that I don't miss anything crucial. Do you understand roughly Ben's point of view?
Yep.
Good. Basically, I think the most important point is, or there are 2. One, most people believe in free will, and atheism doesn't allow for free will. Therefore, if you believe in free will more, then you believe in, or if you think it's more easy to find out if free will exists or not, then if God exists or not, then you basically have to decide against atheism based on free will. And the other point which Ben says, atheism claims that everything has to be explainable by nature or by natural laws. And theism says not everything has to be explainable by natural laws. Therefore, the theists have epistemological escape hatch, which the naturalists don't. So those are Ben's two main arguments in this debate. And I would say Alex acknowledged that these are, that Ben's view is coherent, let's say it like this. He just disagrees with assumptions. And then Alex's point of view, Alex goes along with Ben's opening that it is not possible to prove that God exists or doesn't exist. He also agrees that under atheism free will can't exist, but he argues that under theism free will can't exist either. He thinks that the self actually exists, but it's only a description of a collective, just like a ship is a meaningful description, even though it's actually a collection of planks and ropes. And he thinks that his proof that free will can't exist work both under atheism and theism. During this debate, he doesn't give a response to Ben's argument where he says that theists can't appeal to mystery, but atheism can't. So with that I want to say, Ben says, the number of possible explanations for a theist is larger than the number of possible explanations that atheists can have. And Alex doesn't really respond to that because he thinks it's not really needed to give a response because free will can't exist according to his argument. And for the sake of the conversation, Alex agrees that the belief in free will is beneficial or even necessary for most humans. But he is just an evolutionary. But in his opinion, that is just an evolutionary advantageous illusion that our brain causes. And it's such a strong illusion that most people can't question it or don't want to question it. But yeah, it's still an illusion. So that's Alex's point of view. And I think, it was a very civil debate. So at the end, both agreed and said, yeah, you're rational, you're just delusional because your assumptions are wrong. And yeah. And I would also agree with them that given the assumptions, all the conclusions they draw are correct. So I don't really see a need to view the whole debate. But And what did I say right here? One thing that I think the problem with Ben's view is usually he's arguing people who are not using proper logic, and there his argumentation style works. But in the case of Alex has a logical argument, so the only thing that Ben can do or did do during this debate is pointing out what Alex actually believes, and he can't really get a win out of this because Alex says, yeah, I know, I believe that. And it's just that possibly Alex looks like the only thing he can do is basically make Alex look bad in front of the audience because but yeah, if I would say he doesn't really succeed in that. It's just in the end both agreeing with each other. So it's Ben's argument is pretty, or Ben's strategy is pretty not that effective.
I've noticed Ben's debate style doesn't work with anybody who's not a blue-haired liberal in college.
Yeah, I don't really know if I have only saw yes, I only saw him debate blue hair college students, so I don't know how he's against smarter people.
My question right from the beginning is, if there's no free will, then why are you bothering to have this debate in the first place?
Yeah, it's that's also something which Ben brought up, and I wouldn't say I would say Alex responded to it reasonably well. Like, if free will was an illusion caused by biology, then he would pretty much act. Or he would act pretty similar to if it actually exists. That was more or less Alex's argument, and I mean, how would you? Yeah, I can see that you could make like, if you're anthropologist or sociologist, then you could probably make a good argument out of that direction. But I would say neither Ben nor you nor I am a sociologist, so I would say Alex could hold up pretty well with his stance that what he does looks like free will exists as an illusion, but doesn't actually exist. So yeah, I think possibly you could get an argument, a very scholarly argument against that, but it's not a logical flaw. And so it's not easy to debunk that part. In my opinion, the almost everything in the debate, in that, I only watched the first part of the debate. I didn't even watch the other two parts, but in this first part, everything makes sense besides one argument of Alex. And the problem is the whole argument of Alex builds on that one argument. And so I will now show you the section of the debate, or the argument of the debate.
Is in fact the case that free will doesn't exist, and we may feel very nihilistic towards that, but
sorry, where is the mouse?
Let me guess. You're thinking about going to therapy. And as a therapist myself, of course I'm going to say that's a great idea. But first, let's talk about the things they don't tell you. First of all, you're going to say...
Sorry. I didn't think about advertisement. And yeah.
Would fall away.
I will quickly jump back to where it starts.
They have to engage a sense,
I should say, has done so well is
it? I'm not sure anymore where I started, so let's just do it like this and risk another advertisement.
It is in fact the case that free will doesn't exist, and we may feel very nihilistic towards that, but as a wise man once said, facts don't care about your feelings. And I will say that the argument against free will, in my view, is based upon something broader than just scientific analysis or empirical research. Rather, we can build an argument, I think, from a law of logic, the proposition that P must either be true or false, and it can't be both, it can't be neither. It has to be one or the other. Now, this law of the excluded middle, one of the foundational precepts of philosophy, we can simply ask a question of any kind of mental activity, and this will be regardless of whether it's material or immaterial. That's what makes this a crucial argument, and an important one, a pertinent one, is that you can ask of that mental activity, is it determined or is it not? That is it determined by anything else, or is it completely undetermined by anything? If it's undetermined by anything, then it's random, and you're by definition not in control of that which is random. If it's determined by something, then it's either determined by something further inside your mind, or inside your brain, or indeed inside your soul, or it's determined by something external to your brain. If it's determined by something external to yourself, I should say yourself rather than your brain here to rid this conversation of any implicit materialism, exterior to yourself, If that's what's determining the action, then clearly you're not in ultimate control of that action. If it's something inside of yourself somewhere, then all you do is push the problem back and you ask the question again, is that thing determined or is it indeterminate?
So
Indeterminate, it's random. Determined, you keep going back until you either terminate in something outside of the self, something, or I suppose something undetermined and therefore random, either of which you are completely out of control in. If you say that it terminates in something like a soul, people like to do this. They say, well, look, with a religious philosophy, we have the benefit of introducing a soul. That doesn't solve anything. Because you still need to... It's not a matter of having to explain the mechanism by which the soul brings about actions. That may well be a mystery. But if it is the case that whatever it is that's doing that is either determined or it's not, and that if it's not, it's random and therefore out of your control, and that if it is, it ultimately terminates in something outside of yourself or something random, and both of which are out of your control, free will cannot exist.
well,
And so I would be
that argument
careful.
does rely.
So that was the argument of Alex. And do you understand what he is, or do you understand and agree with what he says here?
It makes sense. I don't agree.
But I mean,
It's,
he makes the claim that due to laws of logic, free will can't exist. So if it makes sense, then you have, by definition of logic, you have to agree with it. So either it is a faulty logic, or it's accurate logic. But you can't say it's accurate logic and don't agree.
that sounds like accurate logic to me.
Can you repeat again? I'm not sure what I said.
Yeah, I think it's accurate logic.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is wrong about his claim? Or can you restate basically the core part of his argument?
If there's anything outside of yourself that controls your actions, then you can't call it free will.
No, that's not his argument.
Okay.
I guess I will use Paint again, because Paint is best tool.
So we're breaking out the MS Paint, folks.
Yes, we do. He basically says, yes, he assumes that basically the self, I will just use self because they used, Ben and Alex used self. You could also say soul or free will or consciousness or whatever, or the rational, or like Ben said, the uncaused decision-making process or whatever. It's just, I will call it self now. Basically, let's say we have a decision, and that decision is, we want to find out if that is fully or in part done by the self or by free will, or if it is done by something else. So we start with we start, and then we ask us the question, is it determinate? And then Alex says, wait a second. So then here we ask us the question, is it determined? And then if it's not determined, or in fact random, then there is no free will. No free will. And then if it is here, quickly finish drawing the line. Now the next question is, let's say here is it determined? No. Then it's no free will, and yes, then there is free will. no, then there is not free will, but then we ask the next question. Is the determined cause external? Is it external? So basically, if my decision, let's say a decision that I made is entirely caused by an instinct, like a reflex. So basically, if somebody's
hot stove and yank your hand away.
Yes, that's not an internal decision caused by free will. It's just a reflex. And so if we say yes, and it is external, then when it's external, oh, I forgot the question mark here. And then here, is it external? Yes. Then we go to free will. And if it is not external, then we say perhaps we can look at it a bit closer and we find more details. And then that's what Alex does here. So like this, and then the whole chain starts again. Then we can ask again that new things which is not random and which is not determined. Perhaps we can split it up more, and then we see, is this thing which we look closer, is this random? No, it's not random, but perhaps it's free will, or it is not. Perhaps it is externally caused, or it is not. It's internally caused, and then we end up a loop, and at some point, everything that every decision we make could either be assigned to random or to an external cause. And since everything is explainable by randomness or by external causes, there are no internal. But basically, by definition, this means in the end, or by logic, it means in the end that there are no internal uncaused free will decisions. That's Alex's argument. So basically, no matter what you basically, if you think through it, through any decision, we can always split it up to the point where everything can be attributed to stuff outside of our control. And therefore, free will is basically completely excluded. That's Alex's point.
Okay.
And would you still say this is proper logic? Solid logical argument? Or would you...
I think it's missing a whole branch of the tree, but...
You mean... yeah. I agree with you. And I would say that this branch of the tree is actually missing. And that's why I basically wanted to make this video, because Alex made multiple logical flaws in his argument. And not just missing a tree, but he also did a few other problematic things when it comes to logic. And now that's the goal of this stream, to point those out. So before we start with the logic part, I first want to do a few definitions. Basically, what is an external cause and what is random? I first want to explain that, because if we don't explain that, then we can do we don't have a common ground to argue on. So, in my opinion, the external cause, or I call it determinism, this one is pretty intuitive. Let's say I set up a rule system, and then I say the variable C is always 3 billion or whatever. And I say the law of gravity always behaves like this. Or if I push on one side of the pencil, the whole pencil moves, not just the place where I push. Stuff like this is deterministic, and that's very intuitive why it is the way it is. Like, as soon as you think about it a bit. Yeah, that's also why before Einstein came, the physicists thought that everything is completely predetermined. And there are also many different cultures and religions which think about like everything is predestined, or how is it called? I think I said the word almost correct. But yeah, I think that's the least controversial part. And it's also the thing which is the most easy to test, because you can just make an experiment and repeat it a bunch of times, and since it's deterministic, it will always behave the same. So that's pretty intuitive. And the only thing which I like to mention here is the rule set doesn't have to be the way it is in our world. Or at least as far as we know now in science, it doesn't seem like the universe had to be the way it is now. So basically, let's take an analogy of games or physics simulations. As soon as somebody releases a version of a game, then within that very same version, the game always behaves the same. But just because you can make a physics simulation that is internally logically coherent and has a consistent law system, you can make a completely different physics simulation or a game or Minecraft or Skyrim or whatever. And these are all have different types of laws. But these laws, if you test inside the universe, they always behave the same, but they don't have to logically exist that way. So it's basically, as soon as it comes into existence, everything is logical and intuitive. But it's not necessarily logical or intuitive why it came into existence. So that's the only thing of, basically, with determinism, the only place where mystery can be found, like the fine-tuning argument or stuff like this. More interesting is randomness, because people act as if that's obvious, and yes, if you roll the dice, it's not always the same number that shows up. But when you actually think about it, randomness is not really all that intuitive. I mean, with the dice, it is. Like, you don't know the starting condition, so it's fully dependent on the starting definition, but starting position. But let's take another example. Let's take quantum physics. There, you have basically... That's why I switched to my tablet, because now I can draw. There you have basically probability space or whatever. So here I have position A or position B, and this is the probability distribution, and it could either fall, it's like it could either fall into that direction or into that direction. And it's just sometimes you don't know why, but sometimes it's also not possible to find out. But as soon as you observe it, it either gives A back or a B back. And it is not possible to find out beforehand what it will be. But if you test 1,000,000 times, then, for example, 50% of the time it's an A and 50% of the time it's a B. And it's a perfect distribution system if you measure it for enough times. Then you will see this curve or whatever. But it's if you only look at the individual, it's not possible to find out, and it's actually truly random. And it's a fully intrinsic system. So it's if you have this quantum effect, it's actually part of this quantum effect that it is random. It's not like the creation process influences it, or the way you observe it influences it. It's like the creation system enables it to make a random decision, and the observation starts that it makes the random decision, but the randomness, or which point it ends up with, is actually truly random. And in my opinion, that's very unintuitive, because like, why should if I test it and it is basically here, and then I test it again and it's here, and then I test it again and it's here, and it's like, why does it know that it shouldn't be a million times over here or whatever? Why is it always in this range, and why isn't it always the same value? Like it's for me, that's also pretty unintuitive. It's just as unintuitive as a free will question. But do you understand what I explained here?
I think so.
I think so. I think my headphones just got unplugged. Can you speak again?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Just a bit quietly. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah. So, and I think one thing which is also valuable to look at is the properties of this. The properties of this random behavior. So I can have like quantum fluctuations, or these quantum effects, or however they're called. They have they are basically within they live for a certain time frame, so they are not eternal. They are they have a point of creation. So it's I mean, with creation I don't mean God created each one of them into existence. I mean the external environment caused them into existence. Like if I hit on a water surface, then there starts to be a wave. I mean, in that way they are created. So they have a beginning point. Then another property they have is they are externally influenced. I mean, they are in an uncertain position where you just say, yeah, it's probably somewhere in this range here. And only when they interact with the environment do they make the decision. So it's basically they react to external causes. I mean, stimuli would probably be better, but I use causes here because of the conversation we have right now, or the words that Alex used. Then the outcome or the behavior of this entire random fluctuation can be described by probability. So in that case over here, the probability that it lands in A is 50%. The probability that it lands in B is 50%. So I know how it will behave if I measure 1,000,000 times, because when I measure 1,000,000 times, then 500,000 will be A and 500,000 will be B, or almost that. And if but I don't know. So basically, the overall behavior can be described by a probability. Then the next thing, the thing that the random behavior of the individual moment, that is, even though it's influenced and created by the environment, or it's like the actual decision is fully independent of the creation or the external cause. So independent of turn or external cause. And then the last thing that I want to point at is this random behavior is an intrinsic property of the material. So it's, with that I mean, there is no it doesn't have an external cause, it doesn't have a deterministic behavior, there is no hidden natural law, there is no it's actually the behavior itself, it's intrinsic. So it's like, it's the thing itself, it's not some outside force that causes it to be that causes the decision. The decision if it's A or B. So those are the 5 things which or intrinsic property. So those are the 5 things which I wanted to point out, that randomness in the specific case of quantum fluctuation, what that is. Do you understand? Do you have a question to any of these 5 properties?
I don't know if we're talking about the same thing, but if you run that test, and it's truly random, it's not going to pop up perfectly 50-50 every time, is it? If you run a test that's truly random, it could be 90-10.
If it's truly random, yes, it could be 90-10. For example, let's say, let's make a stupid analogy. Let's take a D20 dice, like the D10 dice with 20 surfaces. And then on 2 of these surfaces you write down A, and on 18 you write down B. Then it's 90% it lands on B and 10% it lands on A. So yeah, it could be that it's always 90-10, or it could be that it's always 50-50. Or in extremely rare cases, let's say you have a normal dice, like a non-tampered with dice, with the 6 faces, and then it could be that 10 times in a row it lands on the 6. That's possible, but it's extremely rare. And if you roll the dice 1,000,000 times and it always lands on the 6, then it's extremely rare, but it could be theoretically possible. But I mean, it's like 6 to the power of 1,000,000 or something like this, and that's such a large number that you can basically say it never happens. Does that answer the question.
Your graph you put up isn't the outcomes that you got. Your graph isn't the calculations of the dice rolls. Your graph is mapping out the dice. Am I right?
Yeah, I think I draw a pretty bad example of the graph is probably a bad example because it mixes up two different things. It's in quantum. It's the problem is it has been a bit too long to know precisely how the quantum thing looks like, and then I mixed it up with an A and B decision. So it's it's probably not the most accurate graph. Yeah, but it's
I think I get where you're coming from.
Yeah. Good. Do you think these 5 properties which I mentioned here, they are meaningful properties? Or do you have a question to any of these?
The independent of creation or external cause. Could you summarize that one again real quick?
Okay. This one is specifically about quantum fluctuation, not about rolling the dice. In the world of quantum theory, there are things which come into existence, like certain events, and they basically first they don't exist, and then they come into existence, but you only have a probability in which way they will fall. Like it's, for example, let's make a stupid example, but I have here, I pick up a pencil. Here is my finger, a very beautiful finger. And then I balance it here on my finger. And then it balances on my finger. And then you come here and then you make it fall somehow. And you don't make it fall by pushing it in either direction, but in some way you make it fall. And then it could either fall to the left or to the right. And it's basically the point which I want to make here is basically the pencil doesn't balance all the time on my finger. It's like it starts, it goes into this point of uncertainty, and then it stays in that point of uncertainty for a while, and then an observation variable comes here that's supposed to be an I or whatever, and then that observation makes it fall somehow, and then it ends up in one of the two positions. So it's basically, it has a beginning point, it has an end point, and we know the general outcome which it would have on average, but none of the 3 things which I mentioned here, neither the creation nor the observation nor the overall probabilistic behavior, causes the specific outcome. So let's say you know everything about how it came into existence, you know everything about how it is observed, and you know everything about the probabilistic behavior. You can still not find out if it lands on A or B. So that means it's completely independent or not influenced in the specific decision. Is that clearer?
Yeah, gotcha.
Good. And Alex, I'm almost 100% sure Alex would agree with this the definition. I don't know if he would nitpick on details, but he agrees that quantum fluctuation exists. I mean, he's the cosmic skeptic. He probably should agree to that stuff. And I think I pointed out pretty obvious 5 characteristics, and I also checked it with AI. It doesn't say any of these things are faulty. So I'm pretty sure I don't make obvious errors here. So I would say that's a standard textbook knowledge, which I described here. And so I would say Alex agrees with that. And so now I have defined what is a deterministic behavior and what is a random behavior. And now with that new knowledge, we can look at the graph again of the Alex. Or should I do it? No, let's make it at the end. The problem, which you already pointed out, is that where's the mouse? Here. Alex's graph has a problem, and basically it just assumes there are only either random events here, or external causes, and he assumes that only these exist. And you correctly pointed out that this is not quite correct. So I quickly want to open up something, a reference, which I prepared so that that I don't miss out stuff. So here is the folder. I already drew these paint drawings, and so now I'm redrawing it again. Review streams. So curious on which screen it goes up. Yeah, it opens. So I first before I want to reorganize this this thing of Alex, I want to reformulate these boxes in a bit of a different way. So the start position is still the start position. Start. But now the question is, Alex just asked, is it determined? And I think it's more accurate to say, is it at least somewhat determined? Because I think preciser formulation is always superior. So now because he just asked, is it determined? If not, then it's random. And it's more precise to say, is it at least somewhat determined behavior? Because what he's interested in is fully random behavior. And if you just ask, is it determined, then it's not really that clear. And then, yeah, the no and the yes are still the same. Then the here the output is random. First here. So if it's not at least somewhat determined, that means it's completely undetermined. Then Alex called it random, and then that means there is I don't have any influence on random things. That was his claim. No free will. And that's this box. And then here the question, the better question here is, are all effects external? Because he is interested, if it is fully deterministic, then there is no free will. But if it's not fully deterministic, then we can look at it a bit closer. That's his. I think that is a bit of a clearer statement here. At least I hope so. But like you already mentioned, this tree is not full, not complete. And here I would ask you, where would you add this? I assume you want to say there is a free will branch, I assume. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Where would you add that free...
Decision branch.
Or where would you add this decision or free will or whatever branch?
I would think it comes off of the no.
Here.
Is it determined?
Or here. Here is also a no, actually. What do you say?
I think
Here. You would add it here. Free will. Is it... would you add it like this?
Sure, yeah.
I would somewhat agree. I would add it at a slightly different place. And what I would do is, let's just... like this. Go here. Control C, then Control V. Let's move it a bit. Oh, I'm good. I would do it like this. Delete this thing or move it away. Then add the question. Is the random behavior probabilistic? Because if it's probabilistic behavior, then it's just like this quantum fluctuation, and it's also something which we do not have an influence over. And yeah, yes.
Do you think humans even have random behavior? I don't know that I believe we have any random behavior.
I would say it's not on the way on the layer where we can observe humans. It is not possible to see what is the actual cause behind it, and each observable event which we have is like 100 different external causes which are deterministic. There is probably 50 things which are fully random, and 1 or 2 which are based on free will. So let's say if you go eat chocolate ice or whatever, then there are so many different causes flowing into this. Some are deterministic, some are probabilistic, some are based on free will decisions. So I think it's a very indirect field of study. So it's not really that easy to figure out what the actual cause is. And then over here, possibly free will. Because I actually don't know how many different random behaviors exist in this universe. I'm aware of the probabilistic one, which exists in various fields. But I also know that deterministic things can look probabilistic. And so it's but the problem with the whole, I quickly want to check theoretically, random behavior could also be split up in a loop such as this, because just because it's random doesn't mean it's just one factor going into it. So theoretically, such a loop like this here, we should label this. Is it fully probabilistic? Then it's not free will. But if it is at least partially probabilistic, then we have to look at it up again and split everything up. So this would be this whole tree, this one. If I have zooming problems apparently. Here. So this whole tree would get more and more complex, and I don't really care to draw it out fully. But I would say this whole argument attaching another branch here is building on Alex's faulty logic in the first place. Because if you look at how scientists do experiments, they do not put the loop here, because they do like what Alex did here is he basically has a loop here, and if it is somewhat random, he just excludes it and looks at again if there is some deterministic behavior and stuff like this. But scientists don't do it like this. Scientists try to exclude only the deterministic stuff. They would do the loop in the other direction. They would do it like this. They have a starting position. Start. And they would say they have a... here it is. Can we isolate a specific deterministic cause? So basically, we have a behavior that has hundreds of influences, possibly. And then they want to isolate all possible external causes or deterministic behaviors. Then, so basically this is a loop here. So, here, like observe and split. Where's the, here is it. And so the goal is observe. Oh yeah, I wrote R too much. And then we exclude deterministic cases. And then here let's just do it like this. So basically, scientists or engineers or whoever works actually with reality does it in that way. And the reason for that is it's way easier to find the cause behind the deterministic event than the cause behind the random case. And everything here, everything in this part here is actually random. Everything unknown is in the category random. Because let's say it like this. Every time you watch on your watch, like if you have a pocket watch or if you have the phone or whatever, every time you look at the time, it's the sun is at a different place in the sky. Like, and it's not like precisely every 5 minutes you look at the watch and you can always see a deterministic behavior. It's like even though the sun is it's one of the most deterministic things we know, like the position of the sun in relation to the Earth. That's a very deterministic thing. But if you always take a snapshot of the sky when you look at the watch, then it looks like the sun is at a random position each time, even though the sun is 100% deterministic. So even things that are perfectly deterministic can look random. And so it's basically, I would say it's almost impossible to first exclude the random events before we exclude deterministic events. That's why nobody does it that way. So it's Alex's entire way of going about this is already faulty and also misleading, because I have and let's just, so this is how scientists do it, and I have in my preparation I have drawn out something as well, equally beautiful. This is Alex's claim here. This stuff here is internal to the self, and if we figure out something that is not random or not determined, then it's random, and then he pushes the random thing outside of the self. And then in here, where there is still nuance, if we find out it has an external cause, then he also pushes it out of the external thing. And that's Alex's model that he shows here. But actually, this to the right is actually how science is done. You check if it is, you basically you would also have to switch these up here, random or basically where you put the loop here. The loop should not be here, but it should be here. But the random event, like with quantum fluctuation, the randomness of the quantum fluctuation is an intrinsic property of the thing. So even if something is probabilistic random, it is internal. And if we have free will, then it's also internal to the whole self. And the only thing that is actually external is the deterministic stuff. So the way that Alex formulated his argument, it doesn't specifically state it, but it heavily implies that anything random, we do not have any influence over it, therefore it's external to us, to our domain of influence. And everything that is causal is also external to us. So he's basically, the way he set up all the things, he is, for one, it's unscientific, and also it misleads the person into drawing the wrong conclusions. Because, I think, I hope it's clear with the drawing I made here. Do you agree with that, or do you understand my point I want to say?
Yep, I'm with you.
Yeah, good.
How many credits is this worth?
This, I would say it's 1 credit, because it's not a full 30 hours of work like 1 credit should be, but it's pretty fundamental stuff. So it's like, I have probably spent 30 hours learning less than what I explained here. And now that we see the logic flow of Alex's point of view, and now I want to actually define what is free will. I mean, I don't say I have fully finished defining it. I have way too little knowledge on that, but I think we can make a definition that Alex should be pretty happy with, because after all, with randomness, he accepts almost all the how is it called, properties. So let's make it dark blue. Let's say the free will, as a Christian, I would say free will is created by God. It's like is part of free will as a thing that is belongs to a self or to a mind or a soul or whatever, that was once created by God. So it's created. And then next, free will is capable of observing the surroundings and reacting to external causes. And then here, next I would say free will, the outcome of a free will can be described based on values and ideas. By values and then the decision that an individual actor, so basically a soul or whatever, makes, is independent of the creation process or independent on the external causes that it looks at. So it's not like, with that I mean, if, let's assume God created the human, when the human makes a decision, it's not God making the human in a way that he has to make this decision. And also, when a human looks at the environment, he doesn't have to react to it in this way. It's just, it's basically an intrinsic property that is, the free will decision is an intrinsic property of the human without being influenced by the creation process, or it is influenced, but it is not fully determined by the creation process or the external surrounding. So it's independent of creation or external causes. And yeah, like I already mentioned before, I think free will is an intrinsic property of the human soul. So it's like, if you create a human soul, it has free will as an aspect of it, and it's not like some hidden variable makes the human decide in some way. It's like actually the human soul that makes this decision. And I think it is pretty obvious what I want to hint at here. Free will is almost the same as quantum fluctuations in almost every property. The only difference is in how we can describe it. Like the only difference is basically this here. So if now an atheist comes along and says having free will goes against natural laws and it's such an incredible claim, then I would say, is that really actually such a huge difference that you can say random behavior is fully acceptable, but free will is completely inconceivable? I mean, I would say those are almost the same. So I would claim that Alex should say free will is it's not a natural property, like it's not part of the natural law because it's part of a human soul, but it's not such a unintuitive concept. At least not it's not less intuitive than random fluctuation. Here, by the way, I'm fully aware I have not shown that free will exists. But in the context of this debate here, where is it? Here. In the context of this debate, Alex specifically claims he makes a logical argument. His argument is free will cannot exist based on laws of logic. And he didn't say, and he said theism cannot even in principle allow for free will, because he made a logical argument that fully excludes it. And what I want to show here is, not this one here. What I want to show here with this thing here is, so with this yellow box here is free will is almost the same as random fluctuation, and therefore it is at least possible that it can exist. It's actually pretty similar to what already exists. So him claiming that it's basically, with that I undermine his argument, which is built on the law of logic. He seemed, during this debate, open to the idea that theists don't necessarily have to be able to show fully in detail where the free will is hidden. He's fine with appealing to mystery in that aspect. His argument was that it's basically logically impossible, and therefore, I mean, that's my point. So I know there will be, if for some reason some skeptic or new atheists finds this video, he will say, but you haven't proven that it exists. That's not the point of this video. The point of this video is showing that Alex's argument is faulty. And yeah. Have I written something? Or do you find this description of free will reasonable? And now that I laid it out,
Yeah.
would you say there is it's something which is pretty mundane, actually? I mean, with mundane, I mean not an extraordinary claim.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, and I would also say I do not know how this free will thing, how it interacts with the human brain. I don't know how that works. I'm aware that neurons have certain things that act on the quantum level, and I know that there is much more complexity than current textbook knowledge is. So I can see that there is actually a possibility that this actually can look like this in reality. I don't know how it specifically works, and I'm pretty sure, since the scientists who look into this are almost exclusively atheists, they will be blind to finding this finding the free will aspect of it. They will just describe it as random or whatever, but not as free will. Because, I mean, free will decisions still land up in certain places. Like, they can be described by values and by ideas. So if I have... if I vote a certain way, in Switzerland we can actually vote on laws. If I vote in a certain way in a law, my behavior can be described by a certain deterministic and random models. I mean, they are too simplified because, yeah, everything is simplified if you want to. But they will just point to the thing that we are capable of describing it in some way, and therefore they say it can't be free will. But I mean, that's another issue. And that's also not the point of this whole stream. Now, I want to actually go to the last thing of this stream, and basically point out all the fallacies that Alex did in this in his argument. And the first fallacy is he said it's a dichotomy or whatever. I'm not sure if he used that word, but there is a logical fallacy called false dichotomy. That means you set up a situation where it can either be A or B, but nothing else. And then if you can show that it's not B, then it has to be A. And this is the thing which he specifically called that it's a law of logic, and this is the law of logic where he builds everything on. And you can always make a dichotomy. Like, let's make a stupid example. All foods are either berries or not berries. It's a fully correct dichotomy, but is it actually a usable dichotomy? Like, you can show, it can prove this meat of the cow is not a berry, therefore it's not a berry. But is it actually a useful dichotomy? Because he said his argument is it's either random, therefore no free will, or it's externally caused, therefore no free will. But you actually have to show that's a relevant dichotomy, and I showed pretty conclusively that it's not a relevant dichotomy. What did you want to say?
Well, it's factual, not truthful.
What do you mean with that?
Like that false dichotomy, like that. Everything is all food is a berry or not a berry. That's factual, but it's not truthful.
Okay. Yeah. Basically, what I wanted to show with this is basically it's a pointless dichotomy because, or let's say it like this: it's a correct dichotomy, but the conclusions he draws from are not correct because he just showed if you ask a yes/no question, you can answer either yes or no. But it's a. Therefore, I would say this is a fallacy of false dichotomy. And then the next thing, which is equally bad, is the fallacy of false equivocation, or how, I'm not sure how it's called, but I mean, the point of this is you use a word that has two definitions, and you say you prove one definition, and then use the other definition to make a claim. And can you know which? If you have to guess which is the false equivocation, or can you know which is the word which he used wrongly in that way? Can you take a guess?
Ugh, I don't remember what he said now.
Sorry. It's the word which has two definitions, and he proved one, and then draw a conclusion of the other definition is the word random. Random. One definition of random is anything that is not deterministic. That's number one. That's the way he phrased it. And the other definition is natural event with a probabilistic and then he said, see, that behavior is not deterministic, therefore it has to be a natural event with a probabilistic behavior. Can you see how that is a faulty conclusion? These two are not the same, but he used those two as both as random and as interchangeable.
Huh.
Or
I see.
Or if you want to use the Wikipedia definition of random, or no, it's not a definition, it's just a sentence that Wikipedia wrote. Control A, let's make it larger. Not bold, I want to make it large. In common usage, randomness is the appearance or actual lack of definite pattern or predictability in information. So random could either appear to or actually lack a pattern which we can use to predict the next step. So it's basically there is the word both could be appear to or actually be. And if you show, and Alex showed with his lack of deterministic behavior, he showed that it appears random, and then he just assumes that it actually is random, is not predictable. So it's that's the false equivocation. I'm sorry, I should have looked it up before how to say it. But yeah. Equivalency. Yeah, possible. No, it's a different word. But it doesn't really matter. I'm not English native, so I can just claim that. As long as I understand the idea, I don't really mind the precise word. So these are the two dichotomies, the two fallacies which he used. And the last one, basically those two, as soon as I heard that argument, I immediately noticed that he made those two errors. And then I looked at before I made this dream, I looked at the argument again, and then I was because I didn't want to misrepresent his argument, and then I fell to the third problem which he had. I call it sleight of hand. Like the sleight of hand is like a magician. He sets up an argument. A magician basically distracts you with one thing and does his trick in another thing. So basically, for example, with the right hand, he waves around, and with the left hand he steals your watch, whatever, and then puts it in his pocket, and then he acts as if he magically put it into his pocket, something like this. That's a sleight of hand. And or with card tricks, it's also pretty common. But the thing that Alex made is basically here. I would say the sleight of hand is he puts such focus on this thing here that if it's he basically just says, yeah, if it's random, you don't have influence on it, go on. He casually threw that out there, and then he put huge emphasis on this circle of loop here. Like, if it's determined, then you can split it up, and the next, and at some point everything is explainable. Like, everything determined. And I fully agree. At first I thought, when I started looking into this argument a bit more closely, I also, even though I knew that he was faulty here, I just accepted his whole line of argument, or the structure of his argument. And then, because he put such a high emphasis on this part here, I only focused on this part here. And actually, this loop here alone is actually correct. But it looks like it's not correct. So I put all the focus on this part. And so people who want to look at this argument, since he put so much emphasis on this aspect of it that is actually correct but looks false, they will be like a sleight of hand. They will be tricked in overlooking that the whole argument is wrongly set up, and the actual flaw is in the random aspect. Like that he just threw out random as an external cause which you don't have any influence over, but in actuality random is, even if you don't have an influence over it, it's still an intrinsic property. So it's like he acts as if it's an external property. So that's and what did I write down? I wrote down a huge text here. Well, I wrote down also the one reason why it works so well is because the scientific method, it actually is trying to figure out the external causes. And so people are already used to this loop here, trying to figure out all the external causes, but he just switches everything around in a way that the actual flaw in his argument is right at the beginning excluded so that nobody looks at it. And that's a sleight of hand. And so these are the three logical flaws that is built on his into his argument. And then the whole 24 minutes of his debate, he builds everything on this specific argument and says, therefore, theists can't have free will. And yeah, that's wrong, like I showed here. Do you still? I mean, I think I've made a lot of complicated stuff. Said a lot of complicated things, which probably, if you're not too familiar with it are difficult to remember. So what would you take away with this, what I showed here?
What I take away?
Yeah, or do you think, or if you saw that argument, or we could listen to it again and to this the video which he said, the section,
Yeah.
and then we can see if you if you can still remember, or what you think what the problem is, the main or the most interesting problem or most faulty problem.
I just think it is in fact the
succeeded,
case.
by the way.
It is in fact the case that free will doesn't exist, and we may feel very nihilistic towards that, but as a wise man once said, facts don't care about your feelings. And I will say that the argument against free will, in my view, is based upon something broader than just scientific analysis or empirical research. Rather, we can build an argument, I think, from a law of logic, the proposition that P must either be true or false, and it can't be both, it can't be neither. It has to be one or the other. Now, this law of the excluded middle, one of the foundational precepts of philosophy, we can simply ask a question of any kind of mental activity, and this will be regardless of whether it's material or immaterial. That's what makes this a crucial argument, and an important one, a pertinent one, is that you can ask of that mental activity, is it determined or is it not? That is it determined by anything else, or is it completely undetermined by anything? If it's undetermined by anything, then it's random, and you're by definition not in control of that which is random. If it's determined by something, then it's either determined by something...
Do you see a few of the things which I talked about, which he says here? For example, the random that he says, if it's not determined, it's random, you're per definition not in control of it. He just mixes up the two definitions for random. And he put a huge emphasis on the law of logic and dichotomy, like it has to either A or B and stuff like this. And then he casually just threw out the entire thing where actually his logical flaw is. He just mentions it quickly and goes on.
And if it's determined by anything, so if your own brain determines something, then it's determined by something, and it's not free will. But if it's not, then it's random, and it's not free will. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Further inside your mind, or inside your brain, or indeed inside your soul, or it's determined by something external to your brain. If it's determined by something external to yourself, I should say yourself rather than your brain here to rid this conversation of any implicit materialism, exterior to yourself, if that's what's determining the action, then clearly you're not in ultimate control of that action. If it's something inside of yourself somewhere, then all you do is push the problem back and you ask the question again, is that thing determined or is it indeterminate? So indeterminate, it's random. Determined, you keep going back until you either terminate in something outside of the self, something, or I suppose something undetermined and therefore random, either of which you are completely out of control in. If you say that it terminates in something like a soul, people like to do this, they say, well look, with a religious philosophy we have the benefit of introducing a soul. That doesn't solve anything, because you still need to, it's not a matter of having to explain the mechanism by which the soul brings about actions. That may well be a mystery, but if it is the case that whatever it is that's doing that is either determined or it's not, and that if it's not, it's random and therefore out of your control, and that if it is, it ultimately terminates in something outside of yourself or something random, and both of which are out of your control, free will cannot exist.
Well,
so I would be
that
careful.
argument.
Yeah, and also here, I think that's also worth pointing out.
Then all you do is push the problem back, and you ask the question again: is that thing determined, or is it in itself something you are completely out of control in? If you say that it terminates in something like that, doesn't solve anything, because you still need to. It's not a matter of having to explain the mechanism by which the soul.
So here he says, he doesn't really. He can accept if a theist says, yeah, the concept of a soul is a mystery. He is fine with that. His problem is that free will can't exist. So basically, if I now say, I showed him how free will can exist, and it's actually pretty similar to how randomness exists. So it's not really all that spectacular. I can show how it can exist. I just don't know how it works. Then he's fine with that. At least it's less of a huge problem in a way he states here. So
say, well, look, with a religious philosophy, we have the benefit of introducing a soul. That doesn't solve anything, because you still need to. It's not a matter of having to explain the mechanism by which the soul brings about actions. That may well be a mystery, but if it is the case that whatever it is that's doing that is either determined or it's not, and that if it's not, it's random and therefore out of your control, and that if it is, it ultimately terminates in something outside of yourself or something random, and both of which are out of your control, free will cannot exist.
Well,
and so I would be
yeah, I think he basically, the thing which he has most problem with, I think I showed here, that it is false reasoning that he applies with multiple fallacies, actually. And yeah, and the thing which he has less problem with, we didn't really go into here, but I'm not skilled enough with neurology and all the other things relevant there to give a proper argument. Yeah, that's basically the whole argument of Alex Dissected. It's almost a 2-hour stream for 2.5 minutes of video. but I think it's needed because there are so many things playing into it. Yeah.
You dug a lot more out of that 2 minutes than I did, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I immediately saw the false dichotomy that he set up, and I immediately saw the false equivocation, like that he uses random in two separate ways, in two different ways, even though they shouldn't be. So that I saw those two immediately. But when I wanted to set up the solid case against it, then I noticed that there was also the sleight of hand, and this threw me off at first by quite a bit. And yeah, that made it probably an hour or 1.5 hours longer than it would have been before.
Yeah, like you said, yeah, he definitely, I didn't catch it the first time. He gives the one definition of random to work on and then uses the other. And then also just because I like watching debates, some things that people do annoy me, and right at the beginning where you started, he used Ben Shapiro's line and kind of flattered him, and they chuckled about it. And I don't know if people do that on purpose as a debate tactic to get the other one off guard, but to give them, stroke their ego to get them off kilter. It annoys me in a debate.
I think this one here was rather casual and friendly, so I don't think this was malicious or had a negative impact. But it's there are probably plenty of debates where that is the case. Yeah. No, this one was probably one of the calmer 5% of debates out there. And in at least this section, the first 24 minutes, in the end, they both agreed with each other that their logic is sound, which is also nice seeing. And yeah, Ben missed that aspect and instead focused on the implication on society. And yeah, it's based on the title, it makes sense that he focuses on the implication on society. But I didn't have to make the debate. I could actually analyze what Alex is saying. And yeah. Yes. So that's my second stream on debates.
I feel far more educated now.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Then I guess I will stop the stream, and we can still talk a bit more, but not too too much longer. Where is the stream? Here. Goodbye, everybody.
See you.
I cut you off.